When I was thinking about the next podcast that I would make, an idea came to mind about doing a podcast about Aunt Teri from Soul Food and how she was depicted in the film. I felt like the writers wanted us to think of her as rude, anti-family, and selfish. But as I rewatched it as an adult, what I did see, a woman who set boundaries, busted her butt to get to where she was, and didn't feel appreciated by her family. And then I started thinking about other films, had a similar characters of an Aunt Teri. Films like Deliver Us from Eva, Soul Food, Why Did I Get Married? And I was like, I think it's bigger than Nino Brown. This is not just a one-off. There are more women that fit a particular archetype. These stories all had Black women who were professionals, and they wanted to convince us that they were so career obsessed, and that's why they were miserable, lonely, single, and unhappy. Though they could take care of themselves, have fulfilling lives, their life wasn't truly full because they did not have a man. And that was always their downfall. These Black career women is an archetype within film that is a mixture of historical Black stereotype of women in film and in the real world that's steeped in an historical treatment of non-conventional women in film. So hi, how are you? My name is Amadi and welcome to Get Her to the Movies, a podcast where I talk about film and TV and everything in between. Today I want to talk about, not sure if I coined, but the Black career woman trope. But before we get into it, I want to lay down some history and a little bit of a framework that we can look through as we reevaluate these 4 films that we love and see how they, I believe, fit neatly within this archetype of the Black career woman. Since the late 1890s, there has always been a negative stereotype of Black women on film. Historically, there were 3 major categories. The mammy, normally a middle-aged, heavyset, darker woman who was desexualized, and the sole purpose was to serve, care, and provide advice to the white protagonist. A popular example is Hattie McDaniel's portrayal in Gone with the Wind. The second was the Sapphire, which name derived from a character from the Amos and Andy show in the 1950s. The show, initially a radio broadcast casted by all white people, in the late 1920s, they had a television show where there was Sapphire Stevens, who was married to Kingfish Stevens. She was popular for berating her husband and deeming him worthless. As the trope evolved, sapphires were normally depicted as rude, loud, malicious, stubborn, and overbearing. Basically, the angry Black woman. Think Aunt Esther in Sanford and Son or Pam in Martin. Lastly, another common stereotype was the Jezebel, innately promiscuous, seductive, manipulative, and sexually aggressive. She is insatiable and normally is depicted as morally corrupt and has a lack of value for herself. An example of this is Andrea in A Family That Prays, and a very odd example if I'm being honest, but think about Foxy from Comedy Central's Drawn Together. Does anybody remember that show? These stereotypes walked so the Black career woman archetype could run. And I think it became particularly popular within the late 90s, early 3000s. And that's where the 4 films that we're going to analyze lie in. These stereotypes are the megazoid of all the past stereotypes that was created before them. I personally think we need to take a shot every time I say archetype or stereotype because I'm going to say it a lot in this video, but that's my personal suggestion. I'm currently drinking water. Sorry. Anyway, the Black career woman is loud, opinionated, rude, lonely, man-hating, has the audacity to dress for comfort instead of desirability, can't keep a man, too career-focused, bitter, doesn't make a good wife, and is perpetually single. And by any chance, if she is married, she will always put that marriage in jeopardy because her priorities are incorrect. This archetype is intertwined with the strong Black woman trope, which we're all familiar with, which is a strong Black woman who keeps it all together, holds it all in, and handles her business. She is strong and resilient because she has to be. We always see her take care of other people, and we rarely see her take care of herself. Let me make something clear. Sexism in the film industry, there have been stereotypes and archetypes for women since the dawn of the filming age. Specifically, we can link the unfair treatment to women back to the 1910s in the introduction of the Haze Code. Birthed out of the lack of regulations in film studios, a landmark case called Mutual Film Corporation versus Industrial Commission of Ohio in 1950 essentially decided that film studios are businesses and big businesses needed to be regulated. And this meant censorship. So what did that look like? It looked like the film studio hiring William H. Haze, coming from the Harding administration, to be their president. Though in the early days, even though we were talking about regulations, the film censorship was not one-to-one. But what was very clear is that censoring women's characters and women's sexuality was one of the main things. This including cutting out sex scenes from films, and in one particular case, a film made by Margaret Sanger called Birth Control, which Sanger goes around to New York poor women and encourages them to take birth control. On that one, well, they might have ate, given the fact that Sanger was a eugenicist. But I digress. The studios, in fear of federal regulation and the lack of uniformity from town to town, decided to regulate themselves as a Hail Mary. This was mostly a gentleman's agreement to play nice and not do too much. But in the 1930s, with more pressure from clergymen within the Catholic Church, the Haze Code got enacted, with guidelines closely tied to Catholicism theology. The code prohibited profanity, licentious or suggestive nudity, sexual perversions, and rape. But one of the products of a long and deep thought was the elimination of any suggestions that men and women ever went to bed together. As a result, for more than 20 years, married couples in movies slept in separate beds. These moral codes shaped how women characters were written. The sexually liberated, independent, free-thinking women were marked as villains or femme fatales and always got their comeuppance. In some instances, their comeuppance was death. I think a good modern example is Dany from Game of Thrones, a woman leader with a solid but not great politic in the beginning that great men feared. So, the writers in the end made her crazy and get burned by her own dragon. And to be fair, some of the femme fatale characters were truly bad. But these archetypes tell a strong allegory of a woman's place, the proper way a woman should behave within society to get the man, or in some instances, keep her life. I think the BCW fits into this archetype somewhere. Cannot have her cake and eat it too. She must beg or be pushed down a peg or two for her to get her prize, the man. These historical stereotypes and archetypes of women on screen help birth the BCW. So I do want to talk a little bit about providers, because part of this conversation is the idea of women being able to provide for themselves. And that's why in film, they get the short end of the stick. So I want to dive in a little bit more. So I think the point of contention is who is the one providing? Because in cis hetero relationships of steeped in patriarchy, we know that the men must be the provider. But what happens if the man does not need to be the provider anymore? The Black career woman would be equivalent to the manosphere men's would call a modern woman or an independent woman. Just an aside, the idea that we're utilizing calling a woman independent as something negative is kind of crazy to me. Like, wouldn't you want someone who can handle their own? Wouldn't you want someone who can take care of themselves and doesn't need you, but want you? They are devalued and criticized for being successful and independent, and most importantly, not needing a man to be the provider. In the 2009 book, Act Like a Lady, Think Like a Man, that later became a film in 2012, written by Steve Harvey, he breaks down the sole purpose of a man, which is to be a provider. Let's read. This is the very core of manhood, to be a provider. That's what it's all about. Okay, there's a few other things. For example, how well you're endowed, and I'm not talking financially, and how well you can provide. Now I'm talking financially. If a man is in a position of being questioned about whether he's able to provide financially and otherwise for the ones he loves, you might as well drop kick his ego into an early grave. Now, the reason why I am quoting Steve Harvey is because I want you to see the sentiments of what men actually thought around that time we're talking about these films written by men and their perspective of what a black career woman is. And you might say, Amadi, that's in 2009. No one's thinking like that now. And I will tell you, as a person who has been single for 2-ish years, men still think in that way in terms of being a provider. Not all, obviously not all. No group of people are a monolith, and I would always stress that in terms of black women. But there are a lot of men who believe their sole purpose is to be a provider. Now, I'm going to take a moment to be sympathetic and cut some men some bail. The idea that you have to navigate love, life, and relationship as being the sole provider is kind of messed up, and it's kind of crazy. But that's why we both need to break the patriarchy, man. It doesn't help men or women to abide by these strict, unyielding rules. And I am famously in relationships always saying, well, who says? Because we have these rules that we put upon each other when we're in relationships, in real lives, behind closed doors, having to abide by rules that we don't even know who made up. Like, a man should be valued beyond their money and their access to something. Like, do you have hobbies? What are your goals? Tell me what you're passionate about. I always say, like, I love a man with passion. I don't care what you're passionate about, obviously, as long as it's law abiding. But I always use the example of, if my man is passionate about yo-yos, tell me about your yo-yo tricks. I truly don't care, because it's not for me to join in on, but it's for me to see that you have a lust and curiosity for life. But if you're constantly focusing on being a provider and solely being that, then you can't find a hobby. I always have conversations with my friends on this idea that when you're financially stable, you start picking up hobbies. But if you're constantly focusing on one thing, one goal, then maybe the only hobby you got is going to the gym. And honestly, that's not sufficient. And I think it also helps the women too, right? Now this man is coming as a full-fledged, interesting individual, and I would hope that the woman is full-fledged and interesting too. Don't get a boring lady, guys, you know? And y'all both can do life together. The idea of love, similar to what Bell Hooks would say, and I'm not directly quoting the definition, but love is the idea of pouring into each other, both filling each other up. And I think if you come as people with thoughts, opinions, dreams, passion, ambition, then those cups will be filled up pretty quick. Okay, I'm off my soapbox. But the truth is, the black career woman, and let's call her BCW moving forward because that's just long, are depicted badly in film because it's a reflection of the gender wars that get played out online and unfortunately sometimes in real life. I would love to say that when we engage with men and women, that's not necessarily true. They're not aware of what's happening online, but online is being slowly but surely seeping into real world conversations and real world life and how we engage with each other. So when we think about the black independent woman or the BCW, we never really question why they had to be independent to begin with. I can literally make a whole nother video on how slavery and systemic racism have played a humongous role in separating black men and black women from each other. Through the selling of our bodies, SA on the plantation, through over-policing in black neighborhoods, low-income housing restrictions, and employment access. But that literally would take us so many other places. I won't do that here. But the moral of the story is black women didn't wake up one day and say, I'm gonna be independent. They were forced to be. So the idea that media and specifically black men writing these stories kind of poke fun at the idea of a black woman being independent and sometimes criticize them about that specific fact It's kind of weird to me. But I've been alluding to all these films and the breakdowns about them, so let's talk about these particular films and what I want us to do. I made a list of movies that I personally enjoy, so this is literally coming from a loving, learning lens. There's something in all of these films that reek of the BCW. So as we go over all these films, I want us to look through the lens of this archetype of the Black career woman and think about all the stereotypes and archetypes that we already talked about. The Mammy, the Jezebel, the Sapphire, the Femme Fatale, the Black strong woman, the independent woman, and let's mash them all together. They're into this Black career woman trope and look through it in that lens as we go over these films. The Best Man is a film about a writer called Harper Stewart coming home to be the best man at Lance Sullivan's wedding and reuniting with his college friends. Harper has recently finished his first novel that loosely depicts his college days and some possible secrets. So while his book gets passed around from friend to friend, Harper is trying to find out what he wants from his relationship and if he's willing to cross the line. I want to start with The Best Man, written by Malcolm D. Lee, where we have Jordan Armstrong, one of the friends in the friend group, a young, bright television producer working at BET. She's ambitious, outspoken, and since the character was played by Nia Long in the 90s, she's fine as hell. How she is written, the writer wants to convey that Jordan can be desired, but not enough for a partnership. They center this whole person with dreams, creative ideas, and who has sacrificed time and energy into someone who can satisfy an itch for Harper. A very important scene in the film is when the boys are at the poker table and having a candid conversation about love and relationship. When Lance, who we can see is morally bankrupt, starts discussing Jordan. He tells us Jordan is too independent and she will never slow down for a man. He then adds, comparing Robin, Harper's current girlfriend, to Jordan, and says, "I'm glad she ain't Jordan. Jordan's too damn sassy and independent. And she might make more cheese than you someday, bro. I love Jordan. You know that, right? But let's face it, dog. A woman like that don't need a man. She's only one step from a lesbian. All I'm saying is the only way a relationship works if a man provides the loot and the woman takes care of the home." Jordan is villainized for her ambition and is not suitable for partnership. But Harper and Lance, who both put their careers first and engage in other relationships outside of their partnerships, are depicted as good enough to be married and or engaged. The film makes it clear that to be a wife, you must be willing to engage with potential infidelity and not challenge a man's ability to earn more than you. If you do, you end up like Jordan, manless, hormonal, and dancing with Uncle Skeeter at the end. Deliver Us from Eva. Deliver Us from Eva is a comedy about 4 Dandridge sisters. Eva is the oldest and had to take care of her 3 little sisters once their parents passed away. Now that all of the sisters are older, each one has a respective man except for Eva. And the men, though they love their women, hate Eva with a passion. So they come up with a plan to hire a man to date Eva and keep her occupied so they can have the upper hand in their relationship with her sisters. We are first introduced to Eva literally yelling at the men at her sister's house, berating them and demanding them to relocate so the ladies could do a book club in the living room. In this scene, we see the conflict. The men feel challenged by Eva. She's not a woman that they can manipulate or convince. On the contrary, Eva, because she holds the role as her sister's matriarch, has more leverage with persuasion over her sisters than their partners. Control is what this story is all about. So the film provides us with the common trope as old as Shakespeare, the taming of the shrew, which the film is an adaptation for. In the play, there is a nobleman who has 2 daughters. His first daughter has multiple suitors, while his eldest daughter is an ill-tempered, nagging, aggressive woman who challenges male's authority. A shrew, hence the title of the play. The nobleman says that his younger daughter will not be able to marry until the older daughter marries first. So one of the suitors of the younger sister finds a man to tame the older sister. The story ends with the older sister marrying a man who emotionally abuses her, starves her, and makes her sleep deprived, so that they could win a test to see whose wife is the most obedient one. The older sister wins. So now, in the end of Deliver Us from Eva, the men kind of learn their lesson, and Eva gives Ray, the man who they paid for her to date, a second chance, and they ride off on a white horse. But the film does a couple of things. One, it paints Eva as a caricature of a BCW. They emphasize that she is good at her job and loves the work that she does. But the only reason why she is good at her job is that she is not compromising. She takes no crap, both in her personal life and in her professional life. And that is why she can't get a man. She has standards and does not want anything less. I say that she's a caricature of a BCW because some of the things that she does is ridiculous, even for a comedy. Interrupting a couple having sex in their home to just talk, or constantly talking about her sister's man's ability to lay the pipe. The film wants us to hate her, in the beginning at least. Eva only becomes softer, palatable, once Ray is in the picture. We learn more about her story, the sacrifices she made for her siblings, only through the lens of Ray. She becomes a human being and not a caricature. But I don't buy it. Are you telling me all these men grew up in the same area, knew about the lore of the beautiful Dandridge sisters, and now they've been in long-term relationships with these women who adore their sister and still struggle to look at her as a complex, full person versus someone to be dismissed? What I believe to be more true is that these men chose to ignore her humanity. The goal wasn't to build community with a woman their partners clearly love deeply, but to look at her as a witch in a corner that had to be tolerated, which is sad. The other lesson that is being told is the only way to beat a BCW is to find her a man, to make her more docile and agreeable. We literally see Eva take back a man who was paid to date her and lied to her for months. But the man is the goal. Why did I get married? We now journey into a polarizing place, the Tyler Perry universe, with Why Did I Get Married? This film is about 4-ish couples who do a yearly retreat and do couple workshops to strengthen their relationship. This year, they go to Colorado. While there, instead of relationships getting stronger, all the marriages start to crumble. Specifically, I want to talk about Terry and Diane. We meet them driving to the vacation home and Terry telling, not suggesting, for Diane to leave work behind this week so they can connect. Diane is a busy defense attorney. Terry is willing to brag about his wife being important to Gavin once they reach the cabin, but in practice, he hates that her job is demanding. Throughout the film, he pressures her for sex so that they can have another baby, but Diane has communicated multiple times that she is not ready or does not want another child. Terry, at points in the movie, challenged her ability to be a wife and a mother because of her focus on work. He even interferes with her job, telling her assistant to not call. As someone who has a manager who likes to check in even during her vacations, I know how pissed she would be if her partner called me to tell me not to reach out. Granted, I don't talk to her on vacation, but she will always text me while she's away. I added this movie in here as an example because even when the BCW does what she is quote unquote supposed to do, i.e. get a man, have a child, that still is not good enough. She must upend her life and satisfy her husband's idea of what her role is. The film makes it seem that Terry is a reasonable man. At least he is not out here cheating on her like Mike and Marcus. He loves Diane so much he wants to build a bigger family with her, even though she does not agree on a second child, nor from what he communicates believes she is a fit mother or wife. Now, to be fair, missing that man's birthday was not a good look. I'd be mad too, and she should have told him about getting her tubes tied. Not that he had a say in what she does with her body, but it is a partnership. You communicate big life changes, like the inability to have a child with your husband. But Terry parades around like he is the perfect husband, and Diane is incapable of doing anything outside of work. I think about the scene where Pat comes to Diane's room when she is sleeping and wakes her up. With a simple exchange, we see Pat give sympathy for a clearly tired Diane. We also see her inquire about the work that she does that she is clearly passionate about, and find out that she is representing a young boy on a trial for murder. Jesus, that's heavy. I'm not convinced that she gets those types of exchanges with Terry. Like, imagine him asking how your day went, letting her vent, affirming her that her work is hard. I can understand why she doesn't get in the mood when her husband is like a video character blocking the pathway. Him pressuring her or insulting her and indirectly devaluing her life choices doesn't quite scream sexy time. This is an example of what can happen to a BCW when she is in partnership with someone who does not value them as a professional. They can make sense of someone being passionate about their work equal to them, but the inverse is very common. A man is able to not engage in important pieces of partnerships and child rearing because they work. A BCW can be deemed as a bad woman if her husband or her children are not the center of her world. Soul food. Lastly, let's talk about soul food. Like I mentioned before, soul food and the mistreatment, yup, I said mistreatment, of Aunt Teri was going to be the whole topic. Though I branched out a bit, maybe a lot, I still wanted to speak my piece on this film and how she was misunderstood. Though I love the synopsis of Soul Food by the Boondocks, there were some pieces missing. So Soul Food is about the dysfunctional family held together by the matriarch of the family, Big Mama. They come together each week to have Sunday dinner. Once Big Mama is put in the hospital, drama ensues, which includes Terry getting the short end of the stick. There are 3 sisters, Terry, Maxine, and Bird. Terry, the oldest daughter, found a way to get herself to college and into law school, becoming a successful attorney. We meet her married to Miles, a lawyer who has dreams of being a full-time musician. During the course of the film, we see Terry not only having to pay for Bird's salon, her wedding, and their mother's medical bills, but also having her family belittle her for always mentioning that she pays for everything. They engage with her as if she thinks that she's better than them. But what she really is exhausted. She's exhausted that she has always been the responsible one and the bank for her family. Additionally, as her mother is in the hospital, don't forget, she is paying the medical bills by herself. Her husband decides to quit his job without telling her and take money out from her bank account, saying that is both of their money. Wild behavior. On top of that, then he decides to, excuse my language, fuck the family. And then the film wants us to see Terry as a hardened woman incapable of bending and being supportive. That it makes sense for Miles to fall in love with her cousin Faith because Faith believes in him. Faith supports him in his dreams. But Terry, she's unimaginative. What I see is a woman who looks for support. A woman that has worked her butt off to get where she is and doesn't feel appreciated by anyone in her life. They ask from her, but she does not see a reality where she can do the same. Where they see an immovable and rigid person, I see boundaries. We meet Terry at the tail end of her people-pleasing phase. We find her not just communicating what she contributes, but sticking to her guns on what she thinks is right. For instance, selling the house. This might be an unpopular opinion, but I agree with selling the house. She alone is paying the taxes and the major bills in the house, while Bird and Lem, working adults, kind of don't contribute. So for the house to remain, all siblings should be contributing. But with Terri knowing her sister's pattern, she no longer wanted to hold it all together, while at the same time being semi-ostracized from the sister circle. Because I know if this was modern times, I know Maxine and Bird would have a running group chat talking shit about Terri. We have a case of not only a BCW getting criticized by her man about not being supportive when she was just being practical, but additionally, her family criticized her as well. And that's unfair for her. So I say justice for Aunt Terri. Alright, so we went through all of those films and looked through them in the lens of the BCW. But let's be honest, we kind of looked through it in the negative trope of that, but what of the positive? I kind of wanted a counterbalance to those negative tropes. And with these positive tropes, I was specifically looking for Black women writers. And not to say that Black men don't have the ability to write BCWs well. I think about Ryan Coogler because he has a history of writing Black women very, very well. And I think he could do a good treatment of a BCW. But I do believe that the best people to write particular characters are people who have that experiences, i.e. Black women writers. Additionally, it was hard to find films with Black women writers talking about Black career women, so we are going to venture into TV. But just as an aside, I'm really interested in doing more investigative work to find out why is that? Why are we struggling to have Black women directors and Black women writers on the big screen, focusing on this particular topic of the successful career-driven woman? Possibly because I do want to be a film writer one day. These examples are going to be BCWs that are confident, opinionated, strong, and are loved and supported by their family and friends. First, let's start off with Khadijah James from Living Single. Written by Yvette Lee Bowser, Living Single is about a group of friends living in Brooklyn, New York, living their lives and trying to navigate friendships and romantic partners. Khadijah is the owner of Flavor, a hip-hop magazine. She is funny, opinionated, will get in your face if she feels disrespected or if you disrespect someone she loves, and is desired. Whether it be longtime friend Scooter or famous basketball player Grant Hill. Her ambition is not something that she is criticized for, but rather a tool that her friends like Regine and Sinclair use to motivate them to do better and want more out of their lives. You also have Maxine Shaw, attorney at law, whose character inspired tons of little Black girls to be lawyers. Next, we have Donna Edwards from Mara Brock Akil's 2025 TV show Forever. Though the show is about the kids falling in and out of love, I was so fixated on Justin's parents. Upper middle class professional, we see his mother being upfront and honest about the world her son is navigating. Whether it be the white people at his school, driving late at night, how to engage with rumors and controversial issues, you name it, she got into it. I love the relationship that her and her husband had. They weren't afraid to disagree and hold each other accountable. But first and foremost, you knew that the love was the foundation. Though he came from humble beginnings and Dawn was clearly more educated going to prestigious schools like Northwestern, he never felt the need to belittle her to feel better about himself or felt challenged by her success or the way that she knew how to navigate spaces. Now, she wasn't perfect, but they talked about their issues and they were in this thing called life together. Lastly, a show that we all know and love, How to Get Away with Murder, written by Shonda Rhimes. With an Emmy Award-winning performance of Viola Davis playing Annalise Keating, and walks into a room with the highest level of confidence and shakes the place. She embodies a Black career woman. She has limitless depth. She is contradictive and demanding and vulnerable. She is a full person and is a great representation of professional women who can handle herself in every setting that she sets foot in. As a law professor, her students literally kill to get a coveted spot as an intern in her law office. And why? Because she is one of the best. The catch-22 about the Black career woman is that her dreams, her passion, her drive, her accolade, her dedication does not make her a desirable woman or partner in the eyes of these films. And sometimes not even a desirable family member or friend. It's acceptable to ask her for her access, her wealth, her body, and ask her to keep it all together. But to provide support, love, and understanding is such a hard task. She's depicted as harsh, loud, cold, selfish, uncompromising. But rarely does anyone in these films engage with her and ask her, why? Why are you this way? Maybe she's focused on her job because she loves it, because it brings her joy, because she's passionate about it, because it's important to society, or maybe because it's a vehicle to get her family out of financial instability. Why can't these characters have a happy ending without being humiliated or knocked down a peg? And I hope, because I'm talking about these films that have happened within over 20 years ago, that we see some new things on the horizon in terms of depictions of the Black career woman, and not just on the small screen, but on the big one too. So hopefully you liked this video. It took me a minute to write it, and I'm trying to just like make better content and take my time with something and not just quickly rush to write it. So I really put a labor of love into this. It's a little bit longer than usual, and that's the idea, for me to sit on it, develop it a little bit more, but still give it to you at the appropriate time. Make sure you check out the video before. It was with me and my friend Amber, and we were just talking about love shows and how they depict Black women, and if Black women should even be going on these reality dating shows anymore. I think it was a really interesting conversation, really fun, really flirty, gets you in the mood for, the Love Islands of it all, and you should go and watch it. Yeah. So don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and also hype. Hype is a new thing, and I would love to be hyped for the first time, so hype me up. And make sure that you come back to the next episode. So come back again, and thank you for stopping by.